I was thinking about the cities and the large towns that we've got spread across the world. Here in England, let's think there's London, of course, Birmingham, Manchester. These very large cities, Liverpool is another. And I thought, why do we have them? And then, of course, my mind went back to the Industrial Revolution. And just prior to that Industrial Revolution, and we know that prior to all of that, we would have had a rural economy. People worked on the land. Most people, somewhere or other in their family, would have been connected to the land. Villages, of course, were in the countryside. You'd have the landed gentry, these big estates employing most people. And then you'd have the ancillary jobs and small trading businesses, the guilds, I suppose you might have called them at some point, the blacksmiths, the bakers, the candlestick makers, all of those sort of things, which would effectively be supporting the labourers and the people. And the landed gentry would have provided with the tenant farmers with houses, and then the tenant farmers would also have been provided with their labourers, who would probably have had some sort of housing, and clustered together would have made a small village. So you have this rural economy. But the main thing was that you had people on the land processing the food, growing the food, creating the food that was absolutely necessary for everyone's ability to continue. And so it went on. But then when the Industrial Revolution came and things like steam power was pretty much invented, the economy started to change. People left their jobs, which were in the countryside, and flocked to the towns and the cities where mills were being put in, excuse me, and we started to see mass production, the production of things which was used through the mechanization principle, and people no longer needed to use their hands and to be creative anymore, but machines could do all the hard work. Perhaps hands were feeding stuff into the machines, and then later on, as this sort of grew and grew, you know, we've just got button pushers and lever pullers, and now we have people sitting at terminals tapping in things, and the mechanization has gone to the point. And I suppose what was sold to us was that we would have more leisure time to do the things that we actually want. And then what is that leisure time mostly taken up with? It seems screens, watching screens, now VR, virtual reality stuff, not actually practical, healthy things. But as people moved into the towns, these bigger towns, and then these larger cities, we saw initially, we saw the end of the relationship between the animals on the farm and the meat that we would eat and the things that we would grow. There used to be in some of the, you know, in London, there used to still be orchards. They would have Smithfield Market, and cattle would come in, and sheep and pigs and what have you. But we've seen slowly the farmers have stayed out of the towns and the cities, so that people are no longer connected to the animals, to the food that's coming in, and the food is now having to be processed outside of the cities, or at least grown and reared and picked, and then perhaps inside the cities it is being processed into something which is not really food anymore, but a bunch of chemicals with something that once was food and ends up on the supermarket shelves, that sort of thing. And it struck me, this is the big problem that we have with cities and very large towns, is that people are so disconnected to their food, they're disconnected to those healthy things, the healthy pursuits of walking in the country, having the wonders of open space and fresh air and all of that. And of course, most cities now are very tall buildings, lots of concrete, paving slabs, parks which are crammed, same old grass, tired looking places, and not really very healthy, but people are being forced into working ever more in smaller and smaller environments, which, as we now know, is covered with surveillance and 5G technology, radiation, dirty electricity from from all the wiring and, of course, the Wi-Fi and all of that, which is not very healthy. And I started to think, we've got ourselves into a problem here with all of this. Really and truly, it would be far better not to have these big conurbations, these great big cities, particularly 15-minute cities and things like that, where people are being pushed ever more into a small area. What we need to do is to pull those cities apart, actually, and space people out across the country, getting them so that they can have more access to land and more access to growing their own and being subsistent again. I mean, people are basically, they're working in, many people, not all people, of course, in dead-end jobs, doing things they don't want to do. And they might be happier if they had access to land, be able to grow their own food, rear their own animals, exchange and trade with one another, have a laugh, go to the pub at the end of the day and say, well, what did you do? I've done this. And how's yours? Yeah, I've done this. I've got this problem with such and such. You can see that life could be so much more fun and less pressured and less stressful than this horrible commute from the satellite towns into the big major towns, all that unnecessary infrastructure, the electricity and the rails, the Wi-Fi, the surveillance, the cameras, the supermarkets with their artificial food. It just seems we have created a monster. We have created this monster which has no real connection to the earth that we're on, the planet that we're on. And I feel that that's why we have so many of the ills and the health problems, the type of government that we do, because we're trying to work ourselves and look after ourselves in a very much an alien environment that is not natural to the human condition and to men and women. And so many people now are beginning to become aware of this. And we've, as a result of all of this, we've allowed governments to become influenced by non-elected, non-responsible people who've decided that narcissistic, if you like, that have decided how they want this one world government and keeping us in these enclaves. But actually, it seems so obvious the answer is to pull away from these big cities, break them back down into rural, knock some of these horrible, ugly, boring skyscraper office blocks, turn them back into orchards and fields and lands, put more nature back in, spread out all of that. Half of these businesses we don't even need. It's just part of the ongoing consumerism that allows certain elites, if you like, to siphon off the money. I mean, the whole thing about consumerism is bizarre, isn't it? You work all day long so that you can buy trinkets. So you work all day long for big corporations so that you can buy trinkets from these corporations. So the money you earn, you're basically giving them back, straight back to them. And then you have to go and work all over again. And the things that really mean something to you, the things that have intrinsic value and are part of the men and women's psyche, are not these trinkets and this commercialized world, but actually the things that mean something, relationships, the love of a good man or woman in your life, your children, your family, good quality food, your health, watching nature, seeing the sun rise and go down, having time, gathering round an open fire, singing, dancing, those sort of things. Not all this very corporate dead entity, boring stuff under artificial light in front of artificial screens. We've forgotten what life actually is about. And it's about time we started to realize what life is about before the memory of it is completely eradicated and we turn into drones for these people that would love to control us, these narcissistic, somewhat removed from humanity style people who want to chip us and tell us that we're not clever enough, that we need always to advance and upgrade everything. When actually, if you were to pull away these horrible big cities and these big concrete buildings and put nature back in, we would, of course, come back to what we are properly as men and women of the world, and we would thrive. And I feel that is something most definitely, and you may disagree with me, but is definitely worth considering.